don't, we have minutes.
I can't hear her.
We did.
Minutes. Okay. You got them?
Thank you.
Approval. Approval of minutes. I don't see any minutes. The county clerk, telling us to remember what we did. Well, one thing we did.
The workshop, maybe?
There's two sets of minutes in there.
Here it is.
Yeah, two sets.
Okay.
One from the meeting
Everybody
and
look at
then
the
one from
minutes quickly.
the Alliance.
Mhm.
Yeah. Here I found the last tree survey.
Praise the Lord.
Awesome. We're not going to do
With the help of
that.
Keith.
I can tell you right now. We did do March 1st. We did measure those trees.
That's on the second set of minutes.
Yes.
There's two sets of minutes for two different days.
Yeah. Okay. Any discussions or corrections or additions or? Okay. All those who approve, say aye.
Someone's gonna make a motion.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve the minutes for March 1st. Without correction. A second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, again, aye. Okay, new business. We did get together March 1st.
Did you do both sets of minutes?
Yes,
There's a set of minutes.
There's the February 23rd.
they did both.
You did both?
They agreed on both.
Okay,
Now you got public comment.
it's time for public comment.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think we have a member of the public here. Would you like to comment?
On these pictures. There's three sets, you can pass them down.
Okay.
Although this is not city property, it's private property, but I am here on, as a part of the board of directors for Crescent City Cemetery Association. And I'm requesting that the tree committee take a field trip to Eden Cemetery, to that area, which is the Hunter Goodwin area, for further development of cemetery usage. We would like to see, what the board of directors would like to see are all the water oaks removed, water oaks. Starting over with fewer correctly placed live oaks. I'm requesting that when y'all take your field trip, you take this roll of tape with you. And you place orange tape around the trees that you want to see saved. That's not saying that we might object to some of those, because you figure oak tree takes up 6 to 12 cemetery lots. But we do want to go ahead and start planning for the future in that area.
Excuse me, Sheree, where is it exactly?
That is right there on the side where mom's at.
I don't know.
Where mom's at? When you first entrance going into Eden Cemetery,
Mhm.
right behind Sag-A-Lot, not Sag-A-Lot, what's it called? Family Dollar. That
Okay,
area
so,
there.
so
Family dollar.
that would be
Yeah.
extending to the south. There's some.
To the south, that's the south end of the cemetery, yes. There's no grave or anything in there now, but we do want to start going ahead and planning for future.
Website.
Yes, yes.
You know, the asphalt road that goes in behind the
Right.
power plant.
Right there on the power plant side.
You guys already own the property?
We own the property, have for years. But we're in our last section that we've got people in right now. That will be the next section to be developed, and we want to go ahead and start
And it goes all the way from Oakwood
to that road, which is key.
It goes from Citron to Grove and from Oakwood to Walnut. They own the whole block but one piece. Well,
to what?
from Oakwood
Yeah.
to Walnut.
Walnut, I thought you said
And that's,
Walmart.
and that's the east and west.
Yeah, okay.
And then north and south, they own from Grove to Citron Avenue.
Grove improvements. But we want to go ahead and start, because we have some really good, nice looking trees in the cemetery now, but they have grown so much now that they're pushed over the tombstones. So we've got to make sure we plan for enough area. And you can see from that picture, we need to thin some stuff out, so we are asking that y'all.
Are they mostly, live oaks and?
I honestly don't know.
Probably the majority of them's water oaks.
Yeah.
There's a few live oaks. out
Can you
there.
be with us that day that we go and tape it? Just to give us a few ideas and then you can leave us?
And I'll be willing,
Thank you.
would be willing to go out with them too.
Yeah.
JR does want JR Nichols, our president, he does want live oaks.
And how soon you need this done?
I just want on record that we have requested it. So it's not something that we're gonna be starting in the next 6 months, but
We doing the parks right now, we can take that after the parks,
so
measuring the.
I think they're gonna need it done before we finish with the park.
So maybe we need
no,
to get it out of the
there's
way.
no, like I said, we still got a big section that we're working with, but we want to go ahead and start taking out trees.
Okay.
I said it's a good idea to get it out of the way.
Our big issue is scheduling, so that's why I'm saying, let's put that as,
That's on the agenda today, so we can,
what, the cemetery?
no,
Scheduling.
scheduling.
Scheduling. Okay, yeah, because, we got a huge job ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, that's what, we just want your input.
Okay.
So I'm gonna leave you your role to take that.
Who's the president of cemetery?
JR Newell.
Who?
JR Newell.
That's the younger,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, JR.
Does he live here?
He lives in St. Augustine, he's here all the time.
Oh, okay. All right.
Cherie, when they go out to, am I to contact you?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I'll be willing to go.
That's a reasonable request. These are the ones you want to say.
Those are the ones you want to say.
Okay. Okay.
On the other part of the cemetery, you'll see that around trees, and those are the ones we're getting rid of. But in that area.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Reasonable request. Y'all want to do that? I love cemeteries.
So you want to make a motion
Okay,
to
thank
go
you,
into
ladies.
this?
See ya.
I motion to do this field trip to the cemetery.
To Eden Cemetery.
That's a meeting cemetery.
Did I hear a motion?
Mm-hmm. I have a motion, I don't have a second.
I motion to go to Eden Cemetery for a field trip
And survey
and survey the trees.
trees. Once look.
I second that motion.
Okay, any more discussion?
Next week,
Well, Karen said we're gonna talk about the schedule.
Yeah, it's on the agenda.
Okay, all those in favor?
I,
I'm glad you're asking. So nice.
I'll let you know.
Before they get in there with bulldozer. Okay. Where's this? Yes. So, old business, we did do, Avon Lions Park. Every oak tree in there is a heritage tree. That was wonderful. They were so big. And some of them need some work. Those on the north end of the park, sort of across from the funeral home, there's three of oak trees. And I think like in there, some of them, one of them at least. I guess one would need an arborist to look at them and evaluate whether they should come down, be pruned, or all of them come down, or what.
Looks like someone's eating one of those.
Over by the bathrooms, there's a clump, it looks like it's deteriorated or it's
Like termites or
termite
something.
damage.
Like
Well,
a cancer.
lightning struck. Yeah, and peeled the bark off of them, yeah. So the rest of them look pretty good, we thought.
So do we wait until all the parks are done, until we start fixing what we see, or do we go park by park?
Well, you know, you would cost to have an arborist go look at the park.
Last time it was $225 for them to look at one tree.
$225 per tree.
It's I don't know if he's gonna charge us by the tree or,
Or by the park.
Yeah, it's a clump.
well,
Look
they,
at it as a, yeah,
We'll get a price on evaluating the trees and see what that would cost.
okay. Yeah,
Can we figure out what the hourly rate would be?
They seem to be, pretty stable.
can ask him.
They're not all over the park.
Did that same fellow that did the Burlington tree down there?
that was, James Soko.
That's his name. Did the tree outside here?
He looked at that one, he looked at the one across the street, the one down there by the phone office. And then we've also had, one that, I can't think of his name, Lisa likes to use him.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name.
We'll find out what that would cost to.
Thank you.
So
Look
we
at that
have,
clump.
we have someone that does that in person.
Yeah, it's not like there's a couple options. They could first see what they're gonna charge us to do it.
Okay. Okay, anybody have anything else to say about our park survey that we did?
No.
Okay, it was fun, absolutely. Cynthia brought this great measuring tape thing and there's two people, one has to hold it, the other go around it. And then somebody records, and Karen came and stayed and girls walked in. I hate that we have to, it has to be an official meeting every time, as if, I mean, we're conducting business, but it's our job business, it's not like.
Yeah, we just have to advertise it, and you guys are gonna be together, talking about tree stuff.
And people.
So it has to be labeled as a workshop.
And see what we're doing.
It's easy, yeah, all right. Still gotta do it. Yeah.
I mean, we have a lot of trees to go. And the next thing that we discussed, we'd like to tackle would be, what's the name of that thing?
Mathis Park?
Mathis at the end of the.
Little tiny one, yeah.
And then, the one at,
Dexter vehicle.
the one at the end of, place down that, what, Dex?
Oh,
Cullen Bar, Thomas Cullen.
Culver, yeah. And we figure those two will go pretty fast, and then start on Dexter Beach. And that whole Grand Rondo Street.
There's,
It's a lot, a long,
there's three heritage trees in Culver Park.
okay, but,
And there's two on the right of way that's outside the fence,
Yeah.
one inside the fence.
okay. One got cut down, didn't it? An old-
That was an old water road that we had cut down. It was in pretty bad shape.
Okay, well, yeah, I guess, in the interest of the survey, we'll go measure them and know them and put them in our list. So we figured those two parks, and the little ones aren't gonna take long. Dexter Beach and Grand Rondo are gonna do a big job. And we better start at Liz's house and take down half of the trees. Is that on city property?
We really don't know. As soon as we get caught up, I'm gonna have Ronnie go cut it down.
Don't cut the tree down, just cut the bad parts. I'll take care of the, my
We won't
side.
cut it. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I love that tree.
yeah, but there's a dead parties coming.
Yeah.
I think the fall on something. Okay, new business is under the inspection of city manager.
So there were 60-some pages in the packet. Turns out the last half of that is not tree related, so we'll stop at 4.5, which is about 30 pages in.
I was wondering,
Yeah. So what's a sidewalk, a street
I'm like
list?
sidewalks and stuff, I know.
Only about 30 pages.
Okay.
It is laborious. We'll try to skip parts we can skip. If you, as we go through this, consider that this is mostly for a new subdivision. So imagine like a big 15 acres is gonna be cleared. We're gonna run some streets in there and put 50 houses in there. What are the buffer requirements? What are the natural area requirements? How many trees can they clear? An entire lot and so forth. So that's kind of what it goes into. And I'm gonna work at the computer so I can put the notes in as we go. And there are some grammar and typo errors and so forth. And sometimes they'll reference positions that we don't have with the city. We'll try to catch all that as we go through it.
I have a question.
Yes.
One, are there that many pieces of land that could be developed left in Crescent City?
Well, keep in mind, people can annex in and develop a subdivision. The neighborhood I live in Willaca, same thing, it was decades ago, but it's right on the edge, annexed in. Now they're putting 93 homes in there.
Wow.
So, and when you look at the quality of the big lots, I'm really surprised how far apart the houses are, but that's a function of their code. They clear cut the whole development as they go, and they put one little crepe myrtle tree in the front yard, beech tree, 5 hedge bushes across, so that's a function of the code. So if you drive through that neighborhood, it's over 308B, and you think this doesn't look right, that's what we're working on today is what will that new development look like?
Yeah, that, whatever RV park at the end of Prospect,
Yeah,
that got clear cut.
they got quite a bit of trees removed.
Yeah.
When they come in with their final, we're still waiting for the final site plan, submittal, and then we'll bring that to you as well.
And that's in the city. isn't it?
That's in the city, yes.
So if we.
So that could have been a neighborhood instead of a RV park.
If we had this code in effect, would it have affected what they did?
It would, and well, our current code, could have been applied differently than it was. We were going through leadership change, and our interim city manager just said, go ahead and take out the invasive species. And technically, really, they shouldn't have taken anything out until the final site plan was approved, which includes a tree survey and so forth. So the procedures weren't followed, but we had a lot of turnover and new people, and so it just it was a challenge. But now we're waiting on final site plan, and we'll do it the proper methodology.
Okay, that's why we're gonna do all this stuff.
So if you just follow along, some parts like the definitions and all that, we'll just skip through. But we're starting with 4.2, landscaping and buffers. And this area, the section just talks about the intent, about buffering different types of uses. So if the neighborhood is up against a commercial, there has to be a landscape buffer between them. Entrance to subdivisions have to have buffering, things like that. So this whole first page 1 and page 2 is talks a little bit about exemptions. Single and two-family residences shall not be interpreted to exempt residential developments that require approval of the development plan. So we'll get into single-family residential development. This does not go over just somebody in an existing home wants to remove a tree. That's not in this section. This is about new development.
That's another question. Does this apply to businesses being built?
It will apply, you'll see parking lots. We'll get a new plaza, north end of town. It'll apply to all that.
All these auto parts stores that.
Exactly. Like the most recent was the O'Reilly's, the landscape plan will be subject to the code. So starting at 4.3, required landscaping. Requirements of this section apply to all development unless exempted. Vehicular use areas interior. Landscape areas shall be provided to break up excessively long continuous runs of parking space. Generally, a parking bay shall not contain more than 10 continuous parking spaces or extend more than 100 feet, whichever is more restrictive, without being broken up by a landscape area. Each row of interior parking spaces shall be terminated at each end by a landscape area. If you look at the Save-A-Lot Plaza, there are no landscape areas. That's what the opposite looks like. These landscape areas required in shall have shall have a minimum width of 10 feet and a minimum size of 150 square feet. If required to meet the city's tree protection requirements, the city manager or designee may require the developer to relocate or modify the location or size of a specific interior landscape areas. However, in no instance shall such areas be smaller than 150 square feet as required. At a minimum, interior landscaping shall meet or exceed the square footage requirements below. In no instance shall there be less than one canopy tree for each 75 square feet or fraction thereof of required interior landscape area. Flexibility will be allowed in the location of the interior trees required, and the city manager or designee will have the final approval. In a vehicular use area where the strict application of the foregoing requirements is seriously limit the function of the area or injurious to trees proposed to be retained, the location and shape of required interior landscaping may be altered so long as the full square footage of landscape area is provided. If landscape areas are relocated near the perimeter of the paved area, these landscape areas shall be in addition to the buffer requirements below. So sometimes you'll find that when they're building a building that requires a certain number of parking spaces, and their landscape code requires a certain amount of landscaping, and they can't make it work. They say, if I build your parking requirements, we can't meet your landscape requirements. So sometimes there has to be a little give, we may back off on one or the other.
Required landscaping.
Required landscaping for vehicular use area shall be 10% of impervious parking area, drives, parking stalls, loading zones. Planting shall provide a 2-foot clearance from face of curb. Buffer zones. In order to reduce the impacts of a new or expanded use of land on adjacent existing uses, certain buffering and screening shall be required. A buffer zone is a landscape strip along parcel boundaries that serves as a buffer between incompatible uses and zoning districts, as an attractive boundary of the parcel or use, or as a buffer and an attractive boundary as noted in T. The buffer consists of horizontal distance from a property line, which shall only be occupied by permitted screening, drainage, stormwater, utilities, excluding solid waste storage facilities, and landscaping materials. Compliance with buffer or screen is required in all cases of new construction, change of use, or expansion of use or structure, subject to the following exceptions. Parcels within the historic downtown development overlay, which is a new thing we're going to establish, must meet these buffering requirements unless zoned general commercial or planned development. Developments that have an approved PD designation must meet the above requirements unless specifically addressed in the development agreement. The width and degree of vegetation required depends upon the nature of the adjoining thoroughfares and land uses. The standards for buffer zones for development outside the historic overlay are in table 1 below, specifying the width and number of plants required per 100 linear feet. Quantities of canopy trees, understory trees, bushes, and shrubs shall be rounded to the closest whole number, except the requirement shall never be less than 1 canopy, understory tree, bush, or shrub. The minimum sizes of canopy trees are provided in table 1 for 4.3B.
In other words, they gotta have something in there.
Yeah. The canopy tree shall be spread a minimum 25 feet along the length of the buffer. Flexibility will be allowed in the location of plant material required, and the city manager designee has the final approval. So here's the chart. So there's 4 different types of buffers. And you'll see the way it's read is, so in buffer A, a 10-foot buffer requires 2 canopy trees every 100 feet. 0.6 understory trees every 100 feet, and 10 shrubs every 100 feet. So this is how the planners, when they review the plan, they'll calculate and tell the developer how many trees they have to have.
So who made that chart?
The planners. Yeah, it's like a best practice.
Okay.
There's tons of codes out there, and they kind of survey, and they have the advantage, they kind of see what the built result looks like.
Okay.
And they'll come back and say, oh, there wasn't enough trees, or
They must have used some kind of standards like this when they landscaped on 17 there. All the way from our general to Winn-Dix, where the palm trees and the cypress trees and the oak trees are all planted.
that was probably a DOT project. Wasn't it?
That was DOT.
Okay, so, but they do, I mean, you could look at that and see an example
Yeah, they have.
of some good land, yeah. Although they don't have any shrubs, it's mostly just trees. But they provided water for them, underground watering systems. so they just about all made it, haven't they?
Pretty much. They removed the water system after a year or 2 years. That was DOT's doings.
You'll see as part of our code, in some cases, we only require them to maintain irrigation for a year. Just, it could even be on the surface, covered up with mulch, to establish the buffer or whatever they can get.
Yeah.
So they have buffer types, so for instance, a single family, it's not applicable, but a proposed multifamily would be a buffer C. It would be, and that talks about the buffer widths around the property and the density of the canopy, understory, and shrubs required. So each one has its own standard charge. In addition to the requirements for buffer standards A, B, C, D contained in Table 2, the buffer must also include a 100% opaque screen, fence, or wall along the rear or side lot. The use of existing native vegetation in buffer zones is preferred. If a developer proposes to landscape a buffer zone with existing native vegetation, a buffer with fewer plants than required by the section may be approved if such as necessary to prevent harm to the existing native vegetation and the buffering or aesthetic purposes of the buffer zone are substantially fulfilled despite the lesser amount of vegetation. Foundation plantings are intended to soften buildings and improve their aesthetics. So a foundation would be putting the hedges around the base of the building to cover the foundation. For all buildings, the minimum depth for that should be 5 feet. The depth of the building perimeter landscape area shall be measured clear of any roof, building or roof overhangs. Bed lines, where practicable, shall be curvilinear and wrap the corners of the structure with shrub plantings no closer to 3 feet from the building. Screening that is at least 4 feet wide around loading areas, dumpsters, and mechanical equipment running parallel to the adjacent building elevation may be counted towards these requirements. The following may be used in order to provide alternatives to foundation plantings. Architectural design. The alternative foundation planting requirements for multifamily or designated non-residential buildings may be reduced by the city manager or designee when it is determined that building facade massing techniques beyond the minimum architectural standards provide benefits similar to foundation plantings. In landscape design, alternative foundation plantings may be permitted, such as architectural planters, pots, etc., or allowed to be located within 20 feet of the building with approval from the city manager or designee, and applied as a credit towards meeting the foundation planting requirement, if demonstrated and determined that the methodology is of equivalent benefit to the general public and appropriate automatic irrigation facilities are provided. So if the overall design kind of achieves the same result, it may not have to line the building with the shrubbery. Subdivision entryways. Entryways into a subdivision shall screen the sides of any proposed single-family dwellings by one of the following methods or combination of methods. Perimeter roadway buffers shall be extended along any roadway entrance into the subdivision, a minimum distance of 100 feet, complying with buffer standard B. Stormwater facilities with perimeter landscaping and fountain are amenity center. Single-family landscape requirements. Any comments so far? Any questions or anything? Just roll. Keep rolling. For single-family uses, the developer shall plant within each front yard setback area no closer than 5 feet or further than 15 feet from the right-of-way, one shade tree for every 1,500 square foot lot. Except where property on one side of the right-of-way is not owned by the developer, the tree shall be planted alternately on either side of the street, existing street trees and native species. The sentence fragment.
You want to put streets in there? Is that what you're doing?
I'm just highlighting the sentence fragment. Existing trees and native tree species. Looks like a title. Trees planted pursuant to this section shall be selected from the approved list of canopy and understory trees contained in Table 3. Approved list of understory and canopy. That's another title. This is probably just formatting errors.
Yeah.
Canopy trees shall have a minimum overall height of 8 feet at the time of planting. Understory trees shall have a minimum overall height of 6 feet at the time of planting. existing trees and the other two species that need less water and maintenance. So here's the table. This is where we need your input of the approved list.
Okay.
So if there's anything you disagree with or anything you think should be added,
To these lists of trees?
yeah, it's pretty long.
So, I don't, like fruit trees, like I know it says citrus, but like other fruit trees?
This is understory also. There's citrus.
Yeah, I saw citrus, but I was thinking of like.
Raspberry.
Yeah, well, no, that's a bush. This is tree section. Right? This is
Yeah.
the trees, so I didn't know like avocados or plums or something. I don't know, I was
No.
throwing out there.
Good question. The avocado does really good.
Peaches? Is that a tree?
Yeah, and there's certain apple trees.
Listen, trees, create a maintenance problem. Really? You gotta plant them, you gotta pick up.
Ish. Also, nature had like, when the fruit drops, it decomposes and puts nutrients back into the soil.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of a subdivision architect. So these are the trees that will.
We're the fruitland peninsula, but we don't have any fruit anywhere.
Not anymore.
Right.
Right, so I'm just saying, maybe we could sneak some more fruits in other places. I'm not saying that.
And sell the subdivision, that way you know, like fruit trees and live the life.
I don't know, I just.
So you're thinking about avocado?
Or something like that.
I'll make a
Is almond a tree
They
Almond is a tree,
and it likes dry weather?
it grows in California.
Really?
It will grow here. Almonds.
I've never heard of an almond tree. I had an
Maybe the
olive
first
tree.
ones.
Used to.
Olives grow. Here.
Yeah, I.
Grapes
I
grow.
don't know how-
Grapes?
If we could emphasize that some, of course, any landscape architect is gonna know it.
Well, they don't have a Japanese plum tree listed on here either.
Yeah. Some of these are real easy to maintain and
Yeah.
are totally
And the
part of.
Japanese plum don't get that big, so. They,
So we want to add that?
they have a pecan tree listed, which gets big.
Mm-hmm.
So any type of citrus tree, tangerine, orange, grapefruit, you know, like she said, avocados, anything, I don't see the problem. But none of them get real big.
So if you have any other things come to you later, just send them to me.
Okay.
Acres in there.
Use of required areas, no accessory structures, garbage or trash collection points or receptacles, parking and other functional use contrary to the intent and purpose of this section shall be permitted in a required landscape area. This does not prohibit the combination of compatible functions such as landscaping, tree protection, and drainage facilities. That chapter, paragraph 17. Okay. Moving right along. Landscape design and materials. Design principles, all landscape areas required by this section should conform to the following general design principles. However, no development plan shall be denied solely on the basis of these design principles. Landscaping should integrate the proposed development into existing site features through consideration of existing topography, hydrology, soils, and vegetation. In order to assure landscaping shall remain viable and shall enhance rather than detract from the overall site appearance and utility, including maintaining visibility for site signs and similar identifying features essential to site identification and safety. Proposed landscaping shall be signed and sealed by a Florida licensed landscape architect. The functional elements of the development plan, particularly the drainage systems and internal circulation system for vehicles and pedestrians, should be integrated into the landscaping plan. Landscaping should be used to minimize potential erosion through the use of ground covers or any other type of landscape material that aids in soil stabilization. Existing native vegetation should be preserved and used to meet landscaping requirements. Landscaping should enhance the visual environment through the use of materials that achieve variety with respect to seasonal changes, species of living materials selected, textures, colors, and size at maturity. Landscaping design should consider the aesthetic and functional aspects of vegetation, both when initially installed and when the vegetation has reached maturity. Newly installed plants should be placed at intervals appropriate to the size of the plant at maturity. The design should use short-term and long-term elements to satisfy the general design principles of this section over time. Landscaping materials shall be clustered through the use of species variety, compatibility, and aesthetic where planting material may interfere with visibility, sight lighting, or safety when mature, or where preservation of existing trees warrant. Landscaping should enhance public health, safety, and welfare while minimizing nuisances. Landscaping should maximize the shading of streets and vehicle use areas. Plant and installation standards. Plant materials specified by this section shall conform to Florida No. 1 standards or better as given in the current grades and standards for nursery plants. The state of Florida Department of Agriculture of Tallahassee or equal thereto. All plants shall be healthy and free of diseases and pests. Palms shall be considered trees. If palms are used, they shall consist of no more than 25% of the total tree requirement and shall have a minimum height of 8-foot clear trunk. Trees planted within 12 feet of the public right-of-way, public street right-of-way, or other public work shall be selected from a list of trees prepared and periodically updated by the Public Works Department. Shrubs shall have a minimum of 30 inches height when measured immediately after planting. Hedges, where required, shall be planted and maintained so as to form a continuous, unbroken visual screen within 1 year after planting. Grass areas may be sodded, plugged, sprigged, or seeded, except that sod shall be used in swales or other areas subject to erosion. In areas where plant materials other than sod or grass seed are used, nursed grass seed shall be sown for immediate effect and protection until coverage is otherwise achieved. Sod shall be clean and reasonably free of weeds and noxious pests or diseases. Other ground covers must present a finished appearance and have reasonable complete coverage at the time of planting. Landscaping shall be protected from vehicular and pedestrian encroachment by means of raised planting surfaces, depressed walks, curbs, edges, and the like. Whether at or before maturity, the landscaping shall not interfere with power, cable television or telephone lines, sewer or water lines, or any other existing or proposed overhead or underground utility service appearing in utilities.
That's real important.
The developer shall provide sufficient soil and water to sustain healthy growth of all plants. Where no landscaping exists on sites undergoing redevelopment, or where existing landscaping is being altered, the landscaping proposed shall be designed by a Florida licensed landscape architect. Where landscaping exists on sites proposed for redevelopment, the applicant may request a DRC, which is the Development Review Committee, review of alteration or improvement of the existing landscaping to meet compliance with this section, as proposed by the site engineer, where the site engineer demonstrates professional expertise in this area, and where the site engineer signs and seals the landscaping plan. Should the DRC determine that proposed landscaping does not adequately meet the standards or intent of this code, the DRC may require submittal of a landscaping plan executed and sealed by a Florida licensed landscape architect. So you can hire either a landscape architect or sometimes some engineers will sign off on the landscaping plan. We're just saying that we'll accept either one. Unless we feel that the engineer didn't meet the intent, then we can require a landscape architect. Approved plants. 90% of shrubs shall be selected from those listed in Table 4, list of permitted shrubs for landscaping to satisfy the landscaping requirements of the city. So here's another list, and just feel free to look it over, and later on, if you think something should be removed or we're missing something good, just let me know.
So like blueberry bushes or raspberry bushes?
Let's see if they have I don't see any fruit.
Strawberry guava.
Yeah, I saw strawberry guava. Or blackberry bushes.
What's a beauty berry?
I'm not sure.
You eat it and you get you.
Okay.
Well, that's what made me think, oh, there's berries on the list, so we could add berries.
Mr. Simmons on the tree. Oh, that's Simmons? Yeah. And, There's big investment coming.
There's an edible fig.
The one you said Japanese,
That sounds delicious.
Japanese farm, is that what you said? I wrote it on the wrong page.
Is that a real farm that makes fruit? Edible? Edible, Japanese farm.
The whole thing says it.
They're pretty tasty.
Is that, loquat? Was that what a loquat is?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I think it is. It's a loquat.
I have a baby loquat tree, I got 3 loquats.
All right, the city manager or designee may authorize the use of an appropriate species not shown on the list in accordance with generally accepted horticultural practices, and should take steps to have the substitute species added to the list. 75% of the total number of individual plants selected from each of the categories on the list and used to satisfy the requirement of this section shall be selected from the list of named species in the category. Irrigation, required irrigation. Irrigation required includes underground automatic irrigation systems that conform to the technical construction standards maintained by the city engineer or to the standards of the St. John's Water Management District or Florida-friendly landscaping are required for all development. Consideration of relief from this requirement may be given for new construction which does not require any supplemental landscaping or which contains cultivated landscape areas may be exempt from this provision. Landscape areas containing primarily species native to the immediate region. Once xeric landscaping has been established, the planning director or planning and zoning commission may waive the requirement for installation of the irrigation system. To qualify as xeric landscaping, the plant material must be identified as drought tolerant. Irrigation system design per landscape demand. Irrigation of existing and undisturbed vegetation shall not be required. Irrigation of reestablished native vegetative communities shall be required for a minimum of 1 year after initial installation. Once the landscape materials have been firmly established, the irrigation system may be abandoned. Cultivated landscape areas shall be watered with an underground irrigation system designed to provide 100% coverage on a day when winds are no more than 5 miles per hour. Cultivated landscape areas shall include all applicable areas. Required system features. All landscape irrigation systems shall be low-volume irrigation systems. A low-volume irrigation system is designed to provide no more than the minimum amount of water required by any specific landscape material to ensure survival of that material. Such system utilizes a combination of sprinkler mechanisms and zones to accommodate the individual irrigation requirements of each type of landscape material, including trees, shrubs, ornamentals, and turf areas. All underground irrigation systems shall be regulated by an automatic timer or controller. The design of the system shall include sprinkler heads and devices appropriate for the landscape material to be irrigated. Low trajectory heads or low volume water distributing devices shall be used to irrigate confined areas in order to prevent overspray into impervious areas. Irrigation systems shall be designed to place high water demand areas such as lawns on separate zones from those areas with reduced water requirements. Automatically controlled irrigation systems shall be operated by an irrigation controller that is capable of irrigating high requirement areas and a different schedule for low water requirement areas, provided that separate zones exist as described above. Irrigation systems shall be designed so that impervious areas are not watered. Moisture sensing devices, rain check valves, shall be installed to regulate the controller's operation during wet weather. Precipitation rates for each zone shall be calculated and noted on the irrigation plans. The watering schedule recommended by the urban forester shall be noted on the irrigation plans. All irrigation systems using a well shall be outfitted with backflow protection. Non-living materials. Mulch shall be installed according to the current version of the University of Florida Institute of Food and Agricultural Sciences, Florida Yards and Neighborhoods Handbook. All mulch must be installed so that they are at least 6 inches away from the trunks of all newly planted and existing trees.
Excuse me,
Yes.
could we add a requirement of it not be cypress mulch?
We can make that suggestion.
So why not cypress mulch?
Because we don't want our cypress trees to be used as mulch. It encourages cutting down cypress trees. And cypress, it has an advantage, it doesn't float.
And isn't it like bugs don't like it?
I don't know, but bugs don't do it. What I use it on over to it. And the city, has mulch they can use, offer to people too, which would just be whatever trees they cut down and mulched up. But cypress mulch is really, a big no-no with cypress.
That's all I think Ace sells almost just cypress mulch and
No way, and pine,
pine,
yeah.
pine bark.
That is pine.
But we don't use, I never knew you could use pine straw until I moved to Tallahassee.
So it's perfect.
Yeah.
It's hard to come by.
In Fort Myers, we just burned it. Use it as mulch.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Maintenance and replacement of plants. The owner or his agent shall be jointly and severally responsible for the maintenance of all landscaping. All required plant materials shall be maintained to the standards of Florida #1 or better, as given in the most current grades and standards for nursery plants, State of Florida, Department of Agriculture, Tallahassee, or equal thereto. The owner or, say, his or her agent, as part of the routine maintenance, shall replace any dead or severely damaged plant material. Trees. The purpose of this article is to prohibit the destruction of protected trees as defined in this article until a development plan, preliminary subdivision plat, or other specific plan for development has been approved, and to provide specific criteria for allowable tree removal. City Commission finds and determines that it is in the best interest of the public health, safety, and welfare to protect, preserve, and enhance tree cover in Crescent City, Florida. The values of trees are many and varied and include, but not limited to, the following. Read all that. It's just the value of trees. 4.4.1, applicability and terms and provisions. Except as provided in section 4.5 of this article, the terms and provisions of this article shall apply to all unimproved real property, all publicly owned lands, and all public or private rights of way, and all improved real property when and if any new development is proposed for such property, lands, or rights of way, or any other time removal of a protected tree is proposed. Compliance with this article, including any condition attached to the tree removal permit, shall be a condition to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, other than for subdivision infrastructure improvements required by an approved preliminary plat, or as exempted in section 4.5 of this article. No tree removal permit will be issued for property until such time as the city issues a building permit for the same property, or as otherwise may be permitted by the city. Tree removal and change of grade permit requirement. Except as provided in section 4.5 of this section, it is hereby unlawful for any person to cut down, move, remove, or destroy through damaging or to authorize or cause the same of any protected trees or replacement trees, or to change or modify the grade of any land in accordance with the provisions of this section without obtaining one or more of the following. For unsubdivided land, a tree removal permit or an approved site plan with an associated approved building permit or an approved preliminary plat as applicable as is required. For subdivided land, an approved site plan with an associated approved building permit is required. The phasing of the proposed development must be shown on the appropriate landscaping plan. No clearing of areas outside the first phase shall be permitted without a replanting plan or the required plans and landscape plan, and timetable to commence construction. Seeding or sod is required to be installed for all lots at the time of completion of infrastructure installation. If construction has not commenced within 2 years, replanting of the required plants and the landscape plan of the entire cleared area will be required. If a phase is added after the site plan or plat has been approved, a revised site plan or the construction plans for the plat shall be required to be submitted for compliance determination. The removal of non-protected trees does not require a tree removal permit. Permit applications. Any person who is required to obtain a tree removal permit shall submit an application on a form to be supplied by the city. A tree survey and a written statement indicating the reasons for removal, relocation, or replacement of trees shall accompany every application. The applicant must demonstrate to the satisfaction of the city manager or designee that a reasonable effort has been made to situate the improvements so as to save as many of the existing trees as possible and to work with the existing grade to the greatest extent possible. Tree protection barricades must be in place prior to the issuance of the permit. Tree removal permit application requirements. Application forms. A complete permit application for removing or relocating trees shall be submitted by a property owner or authorized agent of the owner on city-approved application form. Fees. Each permit application must be accompanied by the appropriate fee as established by the city commission. Permit application fee are non-refundable and non-transferable. Required application data. The city-approved permit application must be accompanied by surveys and other documents as required by the city manager or designee that describe the proposed activities and phasing of the development in sufficient detail to meet the standards of this article and to clearly identify all potential impacts to the environment and public health. The property boundary survey shall be submitted with the application. Property boundaries must be locatable in the field by the inspectors. As a minimum, property corners must be located so designated to be clearly identifiable and visible on site. Tree removal permit issuance. If the application meets the requirements of this article, the city manager or designee shall approve the application subject to appropriate permit conditions. In the event that the application does not comply with the requirements set forth in this article, said application shall be denied with reasons stated. Upon approval or denial of the application, the city manager or designee shall notify the applicant. If the applicant is approved, the applicant shall be notified that the tree removal permit is approved subsequent to the requirements of section 4.43 sub 3C of this article.
How much is the fee?
Aaron, do you know what the fee is right now?
For what? The tree
For
removal? $10, I think, for the application.
Yeah, it's almost nothing.
It's,
What happens if they don't apply for a permit and just cut them down? Is that covered in here?
Um,
Whatever.
I'm not sure. I'll have to see. I don't remember if it's in here.
I mean,
Currently, not much happens. I don't know what our current code says.
I mean, like on Oakwood, somebody's just cleared lots.
Oh, that was permitted.
It was-
Yeah, you can for single family, and it talks about it a little bit later. They're exempt from
Saving.
saving anything other than, I think this does say a heritage tree. They'd have to say the heritage tree. We'll get to that thing shortly.
Okay.
Posting a permit.
Penalty or there's no reason why they do all this.
Yeah. A copy of the approved tree removal permit shall be clearly posted on the job site during all phases of clearing and construction activities. Termination of permit, all tree removal permits shall expire 1 year from the date of issue unless time extensions are granted by the city manager or designee. Application for extensions of time shall be made in writing to the building department at least 30 days prior to the expiration of the permit. I think we might want to change that, building department. That's a like,
they don't do our tree permits. They just do we do our tree permits, don't we?
right.
So that should say it's City Hall.
I'm just gonna highlight. Protected tree removal and replacement. Conditions for permit to remove protected trees. Application contents. Any person who is required to obtain a tree removal permit shall submit an application in accordance with this section. The application shall be reviewed on the following criteria: the extent to which the actual or intended use of the property requires cutting down or destruction of trees or changes of grade, the desirability of preserving any tree by reason of size, age, or some other outstanding quality such as uniqueness, rarity, or status as a historic or specimen tree, the extent to which the area would be subject to increased water runoff or other environmental degradation due to removal of trees or changes of grade, the heightened desirability of preserving and enhancing tree cover in densely populated areas, the need for visual screening in transitional areas for relief from glare of light, commercial, industrial unsightliness, or any other affront to the visual or aesthetic sense of the area, the effect of changes in the natural existing grade will have on trees to be protected and preserved, the effect of changes in the natural existing grade will have on the drainage or its impact on adjoining properties, the health of the existing trees on site, the extent to which existing tree coverage provides connections to adjacent open space, wildlife habitat, and natural vegetative areas. Replacement of removed trees. Trees removed pursuant to subsection A above shall be replaced at the expense of the developer. Replacement trees shall be taken from the approved tree list contained in a document entitled List of Permitted Shrubs and Trees for Landscaping and Tree Protection. Replacement of protected trees shall be based upon 1/3 of the total DBH of the trunks of the tree removed that measured 6 inches or greater DBH. That means diameter and breast height. DBH shall be measured at 4.5 feet above the ground. Single trees may be replaced with 2 or more trees, provided the minimum replacement requirements are met. In no case shall a replacement stock be less than 8 feet in height, have a DBH of less than 2 inches, or a caliper of less than 3 inches. If replacement trees are relocated to the landscape buffer, the replacement stock must meet the DBH requirements of the specific buffer. A replacement tree may be a tree moved from one location to another on the site, or moved off the site pursuant to subsection 4 below. 4, replacement trees must be planted on the development site if sufficient land is available. If sufficient land is not available on the development site, a fee may be paid as provided in subsection 5 below to the city for purposes of planting trees on public property. This is where we'll have to create this fund. When space is not available for planting replacement trees, either canopy or understory, on site, a developer may, after demonstrating to the satisfaction of the city that it is not practical for the replacement of trees to be planted on the development site, elect to make a monetary contribution to the tree replacement reserve account to be established by the city within the general operating fund. The contribution shall equal or exceed the amount required to purchase, plant, and maintain for 1 year a sufficient number of replacement trees to meet the developer's minimum tree coverage and specimen of tree requirements set forth in section 4.4.4 and 4.4.6 respectively of this article. The City Commission shall establish the required contribution amount by resolution on an annual basis. All contributions to the tree replacement reserve account shall be to purchase and maintain trees on city property or along public rights of way, as the City Commission may determine, to protect, preserve, and enhance tree cover in Crescent City, Florida. To purchase lands for preservation as green belt areas or passive recreational use, to purchase nursery stock and supplies, or to fund the landscape assistance program. The landscape assistance program is a local grant program to fund requests from existing development for assistance in landscaping. And that's the landscaping assistance program is also established. Laurel oaks, which are larger than 20 inches DBH, may be removed and replaced by 1 2-inch DBH minimum size canopy tree from the list of permitted shrubs and trees for landscaping and protection. Laurel oaks are not popular. Specimen tree protection. The species of trees identified in Table 5 with the minimum specified DBH are determined to be specimen trees in the city of Crescent City. So bald cypress, loblolly bay, red bay, swamp bay, sweet bay, eastern red cedar, southern red cedar.
Thank you.
Elm, hickory, magnolia, maple, live oak, sand live oak, turkey oak, longleaf pine, sweet gum, and sycamore. So just those are specimen trees.
What about cypress? Well, let's ball cypress first.
They have a bald cypress.
Charles, I have to go to somewhere else.
You have to leave?
Soon,
What time?
I have to go to the women's club to set up for that, sister's closet.
Okay. I'll try to speed this up. Here's a chart, Table 6, specimen trees not exempted. So if less than 3 per acre on a portion thereof, 100% of all specimen trees must be preserved. 3 to 5 acres, and 3 per acre. So depending on the size and the density of the trees that are there, it talks about how many need to be preserved. And then it sets up that all specimen trees that are permitted to be removed shall be replaced by a sufficient number of replacement trees. So this outlines
kind of the consequences. So you can remove stuff, but you gotta make up for it somehow, either on site or through a fund we'll establish. All right, here's historic tree protection. Unless otherwise authorized by this article, no historic tree shall be removed without a recommendation by the city manager designee, the tree advisory committee, and a finding by that. Okay,
we gotta have a definition of historic tree.
Change that advisory committee to tree board. Is a hazard due to health or natural damage, or that is not economically or practically feasible to develop a parcel without removing the tree. We have actually already have this language in our current code. The developer shall explain in detail why the tree is a hazard or why it's not economically or practically feasible to develop a parcel without removing the historic tree. The city manager designee shall make a presentation to the tree advisor, should be tree board. On the application, make a recommendation as to whether it should be removed or denied. Tree advisory, the tree board shall make a recommendation to the city commission on the application. Any historic tree permitted to be removed shall be replaced by a sufficient number of replacement trees so that their DBH equals 100% of the total DBH of the historic tree to be removed from the property. In no case shall replacement stock be less than 10 feet in height, have a DBH of less than 4 inches, or a caliper of less than 6 inches. So you can't put little skinny little trees out there in replacement of a historic tree.
So historic trees are what it is.
Historically significant trees shall be as follows: bald cypress, 36-inch or larger DBH; live oak or sand live oak, 36-inch or larger DBH; red cedar, and magnolia grandiflora. So then here's the exemptions: single family and duplex homes and properties, occupied 1 and 2 family lots. The removal of any trees on occupied 1 and 2 family lots are subject to the tree protection requirements of this code, only if one of the following applies. The tree or trees proposed to remove or utilized to meet the minimum tree protection requirements of this code. So if another project put trees there, then they can't take them out for this other house. And the tree or trees proposed to be removed are historic trees as defined by this code. New residential construction and 1 and 2 family lots, trees may be removed from a lot to accommodate construction of a single family residence or duplex as follows. Removal of historic trees as defined by this code will require a separate permit, and removal must be approved by the city commission. Trees that are part of a tree protection area or trees that were otherwise utilized to meet the minimum tree protection requirements of this code will require a separate tree removal permit. And the building permit application accompanied by the site plan depicting the area to be cleared for residential structure and accessory development must be tendered and approved prior to the commencement of clearing. The site plan should depict area to be cleared, trees to remain, and new trees to be planted. The maximum amount of area per lot to be cleared of trees to accommodate a single-family residence duplex is as follows. It outlines the rules. So we can only stop clearing for a single house if trees were put there to meet another code requirement, or there's historic trees there, and then we have to look at it and figure out how to mitigate. Now there's a list of nuisance trees, table 7. It's not that many, actually. Golden rain tree, that's a beautiful tree.
Yeah, here it is.
But it's a messy thing. So if there's anything on there you think should be added, just let me know. You can send that to me for nuisance trees. Or if you want to advocate to save some of those trees. Commercial growers essentially are exempt when they're growing it as part of their business. Then in emergencies, it allows for kind of a suspension. We've got broken trees and stuff everywhere. We can just go in and remove what we need to do. There are variances. That you can apply for as well. And then 4.4.6 minimum requirements, minimum tree coverage. Each lot should contain a minimum of 1 tree for every 2,500 square feet.
no more than 25% of the minimum tree coverage requirements may consist of palms on the approved tree list contained in this code listed on tables 4. Tree replacement requirement. If a lot or parcel contains an insufficient number of existing trees to meet the requirement of this section, a replacement tree shall be provided for every 2,500 square feet. And you basically have to meet all the requirements before you get your certificate of occupancy of your construction. Tree protection zone requirements, including those standards governing historic trees. This just sets out how much area in a development has to be set aside. 15% of the parcel area of any development shall be designated for the protection of trees. No grading or felling may be conducted in the tree protection zone. Although you can have passive recreation, benches, unpaved pathways. And then there are the requirements within the tree protection zone.
So if a developer wants to build a subdivision, he's probably got somebody to read all this stuff.
They do, and sometimes they interpret it differently, we'll say.
Yeah.
So then we rely on our planners. They look at all this stuff in detail and nauseam and come back with, you're actually only at 12% tree protection, you need 15%. They calculate it all out. Like that happened when Three Bananas came in looking at they wanted to do an expansion, put a tiki bar out on the lake. And so we had to begin calculating their impervious surface area, impervious, and would they be required to retain stormwater on. And so Mark calculated the percentage of pervious. So they had to go to St. John's Water Management and make some inquiries there. So they figure all that stuff out and make sure they were actually proposing more parking. They weren't meeting their impervious area, but they were putting more parking than needed. So, we were advising you can take out one of those spaces and that'll add to your impervious area. And then you can meet the code, that kind of stuff.
A person who just wants to move here and build a house.
Yeah, single family is the easiest.
From this, all this.
No, they look at the things for single family, we'll want to look at their, the challenge we have is we come in on Monday and they've cleared the lot over the weekend.
Right.
And we're like, I think there were some big trees on that line. So if they come in ahead of time, we can go, we're going to go out and take a look at the lot. And I think you got a tree out there you need to consider.
Yeah, and I mean, I've always heard the old saw, it's cheaper to go ahead and do what you're gonna do and pay the fine than it is to plan ahead and do all that.
Easier to say, I'm sorry than that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Well, I think with this, we'll be able to go out and say, look, you shouldn't have cut that tree down. You're gonna have to, based on what we think it was, you're gonna have to plant 4 trees somewhere on this lot, on your property, or whatever the calculation is. If it's a historic tree, it's 100%. That's a lot of little trees they have to put out there to make up for a giant tree.
Okay, so if somebody goes to town and they wanna build a house, they have to get a lot of permits from Crescent City, or is it from Putnam County?
Well, we contract out our building department to the county. So they do go to the county for the building, and the building will tell us, we need to get a letter saying that the zone for this house meets the setbacks and all that.
Mhm.
So we sign off on that part of it. And that's where we need to catch. We look at the site and go, hang on, there's 2 trees out there you need to work around, or any other consideration we may have. We need to look at it and go, actually, there's no sewer there. These folks want to put in a septic tank, we need to look at that. So, and then the building department, they handle the structure and all the inspections and all that. And then like at the end, when O'Reilly went in, we had to send an inspector to look at the landscaping to make sure they put in what we had been approved on the plan. They passed inspection, so it's a joint effort. It's a little difficult sometimes with the county, and they don't call me right away, hey, he's got a new building permit. There's a little bit of a communication challenge.
Yeah. Okay, I just wondered how they get communicated to a new person before they go ahead and There's stuff.
You see where we are.
Page 27.
Um,
Yeah.
Tree protection zone, this is all about, did you see anything in here? Preservation of wetlands.
Well, that preservation of the wetlands trees is a real important thing to us. People just like, I want to do the water and I'm cutting down the cypress trees. I don't want those nasty ospreys in my front yard. Yet, you've seen some crazy things. Now, I guess it's against the law to cut a cypress tree.
Yeah, they're protected.
But you gotta know that before you know, you get the tree guy in and cut them down.
And we actually got a call from the restaurant, the abandoned restaurant building north of town,
Yeah.
and they were thinking about taking out some of those cypress trees.
Oh,
But it's, if they, because they're out in the lake, I forget which way it was, he could actually cut them because they were either not on the land or on the land, I forget which way it was. The state looked up and they called me back and said, actually, we don't have jurisdiction over those trees. But I told the guy, I said, you can cut that, but you're not gonna be very popular in town, you know? There's gonna be a backlash, just so you know. And they said, no, we're not gonna cut it. We decided not to cut it, so.
yeah, because if
Did
you just
move.
goes a little bit north and looks at Dexter or Fletcher Park and the erosion, that's what he's gonna be having if he cuts those trees down.
The guys are filling that in, by the way, that
I heard
Yeah.
that. That's wonderful.
What they gonna do?
filling in the second storm washed out a
Oh,
lot of, or almost to the sidewalk in one spot.
It's really
So put the
scary.
dirt back.
Okay, sorry.
I'm seeing, if we need to go through all this. Protection of trees during developmental activities. Just talks about, make sure when it's in a construction, they're not rinsing off equipment and using chemicals and doing things that would damage any trees you're trying to save. As well as damaging mechanical injury, no attachment of wires or anything else to the tree, putting up construction barriers.
Is there something that kind of protects the downhill people from your downhill neighbors?
Well, you're supposed to put a silt fence
Yeah,
around the site, yeah, would catch that.
I'm thinking of the school that if they tear that stuff down, Sunrise Park is gonna be,
Oh, yeah, they'll surround the site with a silt fence.
I mean, it's gonna be a real mess down there, even if they put those little, what, landscape block things. It's my concern.
So section 4.4.8, tree survival. Any trees designated to remain after construction, including replacement trees, shall be replaced 2 inches to 1 of DBH in the event said tree dies after the issuance of a certificate of occupancy for the developed site. If, however, the development otherwise meets the minimum requirements of section 4.40.7 of this article, the city manager may waive the replacement requirements. The developer shall provide legal mechanisms to ensure protection of all specimen or other trees designated to remain after construction. Such mechanisms may include, but not limited to, conservation easements, common open space, tree protection easements, deed restrictions, and homeowner association documents. One is if we make them save some trees, then they just die because of what they built the thing, and it gives us some protection. Then there's a section on inspection, violations, enforcement, and appeals. So this probably has to do with what you were asking about earlier. We make periodic inspections during construction, the final inspection. The city shall issue a stop work order to any person found in the act of cutting down, destroying, damaging, or removing trees in violation of this article, or revoke the building permit for the subject property. The thing is, with the certificate of occupancy is our leverage. You know, they try to just do whatever, we can not issue, they can't use the building. So that's the final thing we can say. You haven't met all the requirements. And we just withhold that CO, call it. And that's our leverage to get somebody to comply with our code. Here's just enforcement, talks about a special magistrate, which we don't have. Yeah, just code enforcement board. And then here's a $500 fine, up to $500 for violations. And the appeals, the city commission will hear the appeals. A section on tree abuse of commercial and multifamily residential properties, which includes removal of more than 25% of the canopy of a tree, topping or hat racking a tree, removal of main lateral branches leaving the trunk of the tree in a stub appearance, cutting a tree which destroys its natural habitat of growth, pruning the leaves, stubs, or results in pruning that leaves stubs or results in flush cuts or splintered of limb ends, using climbing spikes, nails, or hooks except for the purpose of total tree removal, and pruning live palm fronds which initiate above the horizontal plane. So those are what constitutes tree abuse.
That's good. Well, it's necessary.
There's a couple exceptions. Abuse is necessary for the transplantation of cabbage palms. It's odd that would be called out. And then how we deal with violations and stop work order. Tree protection during sidewalk and curb repair. Sidewalk and roadway clearance. That's just that they're 14 feet, at least 14 feet above the roadway. Hazardous trees on private property. It shall be the duty of any person or persons owning or occupying real property bordering on any street on whose property there may be trees to prune such trees in such manner they will not obstruct or shade the street lights, obstruct the passage of pedestrians on sidewalks, obstruct vision of traffic signs or other traffic control devices, or obstruct views of any street or alley intersection. So we can actually cut those trees if we need to, order them to cut them. Natural vegetative protection areas. Palm replacement requirements. Palms may be used as replacement stock for other palms up to the full DBH replacement requirement for the palms being removed from the site. Palms may substitute as replacements for other species with the following conditions. Then tree removal without a prior permit. And that's it. Streets, parking, and sidewalks, and other stuff. Do we have anything else? If you look over those lists and decide, hey, let's add something and pick something up, let me know. I'll send this back to Lupita.
Do we need to schedule a meeting for tree?
If you guys are gonna do workshops on your trees, I need to go over some dates. When you guys gotta tell me if you're available, and then I can let you know if it's available. We know April 7th, we are closed, so. Next week, I'm available all but Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Any day but Tuesday.
Oh,
Not
Tuesday.
Yeah.
The plant clinic is on.
Wednesday, that's right, and Wednesday.
I've got a spring meeting at 4. And then, so the only day next week would be Thursday for me.
Thursday.
Pat? No. Thursday afternoon would be.
Thursday afternoon.
What day is that?
Well, like,
That's the 30th, March 30th?
1 o'clock?
Yeah.
1 o'clock.
Okay, and did you want to do the, cemetery first, or did you want to do the parks?
Or you want that cemetery?
I think we, yeah,
Yeah, cemetery that afternoon.
Okay.
I hope we can do it all in 1 day. It's a lot of trees.
And you're starting at 1, so,
Yeah. So I doubted maybe one place.
So we can meet later.
Yeah, meet at the
so- Yeah,
cemetery.
we'll meet at the cemetery. And you'll bring that tape and I'll bring my measuring thing
Okay,
with the parks,
yeah. I used to play in that cemetery. It's
my tape wheel.
Oh, yeah.
did you want to schedule the park ones as well?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Start throwing dates at me and I can let you know. The 7th, we're closed, so we can't do April 7th.
Karen doesn't mind coming in on the 7th, though, just so you know.
Well, do you want to do the 6th again at 1? And do the next part?
I'm gonna start down here.
So then Dexter would be next, right?
Now, what's the name of that place?
Mathis?
Mathis.
Mathis and Colbert, you guys had lined up for the same day.
So I was thinking 3:30, we would do cemetery, Manthus, and Covert, because they're small parks.
Oh, I think cemetery's.
The cemetery one is going to be a big one,
Oh,
so,
it is?
yeah.
Oh, okay, all right, so cemetery on Monday.
yeah.
Gotcha.
So
But
the
you
6th,
can-
you wanna do Mathis and Colbert?
Yeah, let's do that.
6th,
Okay,
okay,
start.
April.
That's probably not gonna take long. If we have time, we could go,
You wanna start at 1 again, or 10,
Or whatever.
what day of the week is
It's a-
6th April?
Can we
It's
do
a,
At 1, so that way I can get my kids done
Yeah.
to school in the morning?
it? Yeah. What day of the week is that?
that's a Thursday?
Yeah, that's
Thursday.
Thursday.
Good, thank you. Okay.
And then we have, Sunrise Park.
Okay, well, what happened to Dexter?
And Dexter.
Dexter's gonna take a long time.
That's going to be a 1-day one. You can actually probably get away with Mathis, Colbert, and Sunrise all in the same day,
So let's do that.
because those are all small.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean?
Mathis, Colbert, Sunrise. Okay.
So for that one, I thought we were gonna meet at Mathis.
Yes, I would suggest meeting at Mathis, then going over to Colbert, then Sunrise.
And then, Dexter you talking about?
We need Dexter.
Dexter's not a big biggie. I mean, I think both sides of Grand Mondo, because there's a lot of big trees.
Well, most of them are small. They're not,
But in front of some of those houses, that one was for sale for $300,000.
well,
I can sell mine for
Most of them.
400,000 with my view.
most of them trees are on their property.
Are they? They're
Yeah,
not-
everything's behind the sidewalk. The only tree that's a heritage tree
Yeah.
is the one that's in the divided section coming off of Edgewood. It's a big live oak.
Oh, yeah.
There's that one, and then most of the trees in Dexter Beach are, maybe 18-inch trees,
Mhm. None of those cypress trees.
and they're not giant.
Mhm.
And while you're out and about going to Colbert Park, I need you to go to Cedar in 308, across the street from the elementary school. There's a live oak tree there that's dead. It's dead. I just need y'all's permission to,
Euthanize it,
So when we're
Yes.
at Colbert, we can go take
Right.
a look at
and
that.
that's,
you could basically do a drive-by and see that it's dead. And we need to maybe look at the tree at Smith Thomas, the one we looked at before, the big live oak next to the fence. It's coming back, but it just looks like to me that it's, yeah, might need to be removed.
Is that in Harry Banks Park or?
It's across the street. Remember because there's still them couple trees there we gotta remove.
You know, we haven't even put Harry Banks on that.
Not yet, and I haven't gotten to that one. Mhm.
You know,
Yeah, Les Williams, that one, that's at east,
well,
Harry Banks.
there's nothing there.
There's not a lot of trees.
No, not at Harry Banks.
But you can make suggestions on planting something,
There's,
flowers and stuff. That's why you go into these parks too, to make suggestions on planting.
Yeah, there's
As well,
just
it's
the ones
taken
that are
down.
on about a ditch. Most of them are water oaks, laurel oaks, there's some cabbage palms,
And the cypress is in the pond.
they're in the pond, yeah, that, which they won't ever get touched, 'cause they're inside the fence. We did plant the one tree for,
When's our next meeting? This part.
Emma Williams, I think. We planted one there.
1, 2, 3,
right there
April
by her
27th.
table.
What do you think of the health of the live oak at Orchard?
You can actually do one of these meetings as,
I think it's still growing,
Is it looks so sad from the.
Yeah,
street.
it's,
I would say
I'd like
this
to go
meeting.
look.
yeah, it's okay.
Somebody told me, somebody was
Don't
over
worry.
that.
Yeah, well, my people are watering it, they're supposed to.
Okay, yeah.
And there is that one big live oak tree there.
Oh, okay,
There's a pretty good sized live oak right there.
good.
And then you got two right in front of Cynthia's house.
Who's that?
Yeah, me.
Oh, you.
Yeah, they're,
Oh, okay.
the one's on the city property and the one is
I think they're both on my property.
on your property. Okay, are they? So then, well, yeah, give or take. The one there coming off the 308
It's
to the
right.
asphalt,
Right.
that's kind of half and half, so
Yeah.
we'll inspect our half and leave her half.
Right. Not good.
My mind do a nice little trim job,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's healthy.
Really treated. Not cut that.
okay, so we're doing,
We got two big days.
March 30th,
30th and April 6th.
And then our next meeting for this is the 27th.
And 20th.
And
27th, maybe we can do a party.
it's the
Yeah.
4th Thursday, so this 1, 2, 3, 4 is the 27th
27th of March. We can do
of
it
April,
next March.
of April.
Oh, April, I'm sorry.
could we do Dexter on April 27th? Is what I'm thinking. That way we've got 3
We
meetings
will
lined up.
have to review more of this development plan.
No, I think we're.
I think you're done. I think your section's done.
Yeah,
Okay.
so April.
Yeah, so you can use the
27th,
meeting to do
Work.
work.
Instead of sitting here.
Yeah. We have Harry Banks Park and you want Dexter.
Oh, yeah. You know, Dexter, I mean, depends on whether you want to slog through the swamp. There's a part of that that's totally undeveloped, and if it's been raining, it's almost impassable. But, there's a wonderful trees in there. And we talked about
Dexter.
protecting
Oh, yeah?
them before, between the trailer park and the present Dexter Park.
I think.
Not Dexter.
You're talking about
I'm
Fletcher.
talking about Fletcher.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay. Yeah, sorry. I'm like-
Mixed up all the time.
Yeah, we're on Dexter. So when do you want to do Dexter?
27th?
Yeah, Dexter, 27th.
Yeah, 27.
The 27th instead of having, so it'll be,
And Terry Banks. Yeah, I am.
There's picnic tables there.
I know, no, I'm just saying. So you're having your meeting, call the workshop at Dexter Beach, at Dexter Beach. Okay? I just have to know, I'm writing it down.
Yeah.
And then you have Harry Banks and Fletcher. Do you want to go ahead and schedule them or? You wanna wait?
Terry Banks and Dexter.
You want to do both of them on that day?
Terry Banks and Dexter.
Okay,
Yeah, Fletcher's what's left now. We still got Fletcher, and I want to
Mhm.
talk about that. Really, that piece of swamp is rich. There's a place when you get in there, and we talked years we've been talking about this, having a boardwalk into there. There's a higher place in the middle, that there's a circle of magnolia trees. And would you just see that as a bench there?
Wasn't there a reason why we couldn't do it?
Yeah, it's too wet.
It's way too wet.
Boardwalk.
And where's
Yeah, we
Fletcher
had-
Park? I'm forgetting my name.
Dog park.
The dog park, okay.
Yeah.
We had a guy go in there to try to underbrush it with his machine. And it was, we had to pull him out. It's wet. It's constant. He stays soaking wet.
Oh, it's too
But
bad.
you can get in there now, but we did, he mowed some of it. So you can get in there and actually see.
And there's waterfront, it's really.
Yeah, but you can't walk on it unless you
If you
have,
had a boardwalk, it could.
yeah, but it will sink. You know, to see,
The-
you know what I mean? The boardwalk would sink.
The boards will sink.
Like if we did like pile, like if we did like a dock.
A swinging
Like, you know
dog.
how they hammer the dock things in?
The springs and all, you know.
Yeah, you can do a dock, but that would be
It would be expensive.
Losing a bottle.
Right.
Yeah, it's a
expensive.
shame, though, it's a really beautiful piece of old forest swamp.
You could do a swinging bridge.
It's a long way.
Yes, a swinging bridge from one end to another.
It's as far as from here to, I don't know, the barber shop out there.
So all these workshops are at 1, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so Pat and Donna need to know.
I'll send everybody an email out with the dates.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We done, Patty?
Yeah, I think, what shall we?
I have to go and do this thing.
This-
Bang, bang, meeting adjourned.
Are you gonna help me finish this later?
Yes. What time? I thought it was 9.
Yeah, well, till they're done.